For football fans everywhere, the wait is over. The starting groups for the 2018 World Cup have been decided in Moscow, and in less than 200 days, Russia will host the kickoff. The World Cup is one of the most expensive and lucrative sporting tournaments. But since winning the rights to host it, Russia's budget has been cut, while costs have risen. Paul Scott has more.
11 cities, 12 stadiums, renovated hotels and even new airports. Russia has committed to offering football fans an unforgettable World Cup. It'll be the country's biggest international event since the Winter Olympics in 2014, which cost $51 billion.
I think that the authorities in Russia have shown that they're more than capable of pulling off events like the Olympics, before that the University Games in Kazan in 2013. So from an organizational point of view and a safety point of view, I don't see or predict any problems happening.
But Russia has been hit by falling oil prices and pressure from Western sanctions over its role in the Ukraine crisis. Allegations of human rights abuses, construction delays and soaring costs have also overshadowed the run-up to the tournament. The total cost of hosting the 2018 World Cup has reached almost $12 billion. That's $600 million more than initial estimates. But it's still $2 billion less than the 2014 World Cup in Brazil, but $9 billion more than what South Africa spent in 2010. Infrastructure projects for the tournament are expected to boost Russia's economy, with growth forecast at 2.1% this year. It would be the first full year of economic growth since its recession in 2014.
So this is the Luzhniki Stadium then, where the World Cup final will be held. Reconstruction of this stadium cost around $400 million US, and it's hoped that the World Cup will spur even more investment into the country. Sports fans coming to Russia won't just be spending money on hotels, they'll also be splashing the cash on entertainment, restaurants, retail and transport.
Many neglected cities that rarely attract foreign visitors have now got their first post-Soviet facelift. But it's a pricey gamble, with a risk stadiums and hotels will be left empty afterwards.
While they may be very profitable for the organizers and fun for the spectators, what about the residents who are living there? So I'm concerned about the legacies for the actual residents of the host cities in the World Cup. I'd be interested in seeing, after the events leave, what will remain for them.
FIFA, meanwhile, has other concerns. The governing body for soccer is struggling to get sponsors following a corruption scandal in 2015. So far, it's short of one hosting partner, 2 sponsors, and only 1 out of 20 available slots for regional supporters has been claimed. Some believe the success of the tournament goes beyond bringing in revenue.
What is significant is the intangibles. It's very hard to measure them. The social, the political impacts that these major events hold, because they bring a lot of attention to Russia. They help build new ties, new economic relationships with other people.
With a lot to prove, both FIFA and Russia will be pulling out all the stops to ensure next year's World Cup is a success. Paul Scott, TRT World, Moscow.
Our editor-at-large, Craig Copetas, joins us now from Paris. Welcome to the show, Craig. Now, let's rewind to the Sochi Olympics in 2014 that Russia hosted. There was a lot of hand-wringing over that as to whether it would be a success, whether it came out over budget, all that. You might remember that. But it turned out to be a success. Surely they're going to make a success of the World Cup too, right?
Oh, absolutely. If South Africa can pull it off, Russia can certainly pull it off. I think I believe it's going to be a great success because, once the whistle blows, the World Cup is about the game of football, soccer. The politics, the human rights, the sanctions, they go by the wayside. That happens in every World Cup and in every Olympic Games.
Craig, any big sporting event these days, the big worry is corruption. And in many cases, these sporting events, including the Olympics, have become a vehicle for corruption. Several former FIFA officials are still under trial in the US for money laundering. Will the cloud of corruption that might be hanging over this event lift by the time we get to kick-off?
Oh, absolutely not. That cloud of corruption is more like a fog that never leaves. It's been around for decades, and it's going to continue for some time to come. Perhaps the most important event along those lines at this World Cup you'll see in Group G, which I call the Brexit Bowl. That's where Belgium will be playing England, and whoever wins that will know what's going to happen to the UK in the Brexit negotiations based on that game. That's one of my predictions.
That's an interesting one. I'm going to be watching that even more closely now that you've mentioned that. Look, will the World Cup, do you think, ramp up the coverage of... I mean, will it put Russia in an even greater spotlight when it comes to things like relations with the US, for example, the Magnitsky Act, the alleged corruption engendered by Vladimir Putin and people like that, for example, and the incursion into Ukraine?
Well, I think it would have had America qualified for the World Cup, but since they're in, Group X with Italy, Holland, and I think Canada, no one's really going to care. Remember, the people who go to the World Cup or to the Olympics, to these sporting events, they're sports fans. They're there to enjoy the scenery, enjoy the game, and support their team. I've seen this at every World Cup and Olympics I've covered. Once the whistle blows, all of that stuff, the politics, really does vanish into the haze. And all the people who are going there care about is if their team's going to win.
Right, but do you think
that's what sports is about.
But do you think that if the US had qualified, it would have made it a politically very interesting World Cup, given the tensions that currently exist between the two?
Oh, yes, but only on American television and in the American press. I do not believe the rest of the world would have cared. Remember something, the reporters, the journalists who are sent to these events are sports reporters. They're not aware of the minutia of what's going on in the Ukraine or the Magnitsky Act or corruption within the Kremlin, et cetera, et cetera. What they know about is, how many goals Maradona may have scored or, what Messi's first name is, which I don't know. It's a different skill set of reportage.
I'm pretty sure Maradona's not in this World Cup. I'll have to check, though, but you might be right. Anyway, Craig Copetas in Paris, thank you very much indeed.